Hey everybody, I'm going to model for you the rubber handle sleeve for activity 4.8E in our set of exercises. So again, as usual, you can go onto the modules tab, click on 4.8E, and then click on the document. And that'll take you to this document here, and notice now this is the rubber handle sleeve. So in this exercise, what you're going to be using is the revolve feature to take a profile and revolve it around an axis. And as usual, we're going to name it rubber handle sleeve underscore our last name. But before we get started, I want to just look at the figure and kind of show how they're going about building this so that we have a plan in mind when we go to start. So you can see in the image here that they're going to use the revolve feature. And so you can see on there in the middle here, this blue line, that's the axis line. And then on the left-hand side is a profile, and then it's going to revolve 360 degrees around. Now, in the figure that they've provided to us is, again, an example of what the rubber handle sleeve will generally look like at the end, but they have a set of dimensions here. And if you see these angled lines here, these are what we call hatch mark lines. And what they represent and what they tell us in a documented drawing here, working drawing, is that the part has been cut in half, okay? And we call this a full section view of this part here. And so it's full section because I can see it's been cut right down the middle. And even though it's showing two halves of the figure, that has been done for dimensions, okay? And so we're only going to end up having to build half of this and then also drawing an axis line. And then we'll revolve it around. And then I'll go through what these dimensions mean here in just a second. So let's go ahead and get started in Onshape, just as we've normally done. We're going to go ahead and click Create, hit Document. Okay, this time we're going to call it Rubber Handle Sleeve underscore your last name, and click OK. Okay, so now we can pick whichever work plane we want. Typically, we've been using the front work plane, and that will work just fine. We're going to revolve it around. Okay, so it's, again, completely up to you, but I'm just going to go ahead and choose the front. So that means I'm going to hide the top and the right. Okay, and then I'm going to choose Sketch. I'm going to select the front and then change my view to front. And I'm going to zoom out. Now, the first thing in this exercise that you have to do is you have to draw the axis line. That is going to be the line that we're going to use, one, to revolve the feature around it, or the profile around it with the revolve feature, but it also is going to be our line of reference as we're starting to set some of these dimensions. So in order to do that, I'm going to select the line tool and I'm going to select construction. Okay, so you have to make sure they're both selected at the same time. Then I'm going to draw that line horizontally through our origin point. Now the length of that line does not matter. It's going to matter later on when we do the profile, but this line is just going to act as a point of reference. So once I draw it, I'm going to right-click Escape Line, just so I have it there. Now, what I'm going to do now is draw this profile. And I notice it has some rounded corners here, which I'll be getting to later on. But what the real shape is it looks like an L on its side here. And so I'm going to use the line tool to just free draw that shape. And then we're going to dimension it using the dimensions that are provided. Okay, so I'm just going to use the line. And so I'm just going to draw this shape above this line. The biggest mistake that I see students make is they start this figure on top of the axis line, which we don't want. And the reason we don't want that is because if you notice, if you look very closely at the figure here, see this little hole here, okay? If we draw that edge right on top of it, it's going to not leave a gap there and not create this hole that we want. So that's why I'm going to draw this line slightly above the figure, or the axis line, I should say. Okay, so I have my line tool selected, and so now I'm going to draw it like this. So I'm going to draw a line like this. I'm going to go up like this. And you're probably wondering, why, you're drawing it as such. Okay, and I'm not worried about that. But I just want to kind of look make it look like it's an L on its side. Okay, and then notice it grayed in right away because it's a closed profile. All my points are connected. So now the most important part is now we're going to start using the dimensions to create the size and shape of the figure that we want. So when I start interpreting the dimensions, I will notice that I have a couple dimensions that have circles with a slash. That is the diameter symbol. So that's telling me the diameter of this hole is 0.1875. I have another diameter here, okay, circle with a slash with 1.375, but I have two little letters after that says OD. That means outside diameter. That's the outside diameter of the figure. So this is just the diameter of this little circle. This is going to be the diameter of the entire, and then I have a thickness, and I have some radius values because of the corners that are curved. So that is going to be little sketch fillets with a radius. And we'll come back to that in a second. So I always start with my diameter dimension here because it's the one that's parallel to my axis line. So see, this little line here is parallel to the axis line. So that is going to be not 0.1875 because why? Why is it not 0.1875? Well, how much of this of the figure did I actually draw? I drew half of it. So if I only drew half of it, that's telling me that my figure is going to be, all my diameters are going to be cut in half because it's only half of the figure. So I'm going to actually need the radius value. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension. I'm going to select the bottom edge of my figure, and I'm going to select the bottom edge of the axis line. Okay, and I'm going to drag out to the left. Now, when I get that, I get a dimension, okay, quite big. And so I want to take 0.1875 and divide it by 2. So let me show you a little trick that Onshape will do for you. If you type in 0.1875 and then hit the slash button 2, it will calculate that for me and then make it 0.094. Now, my figure got really small, okay, and I understand that because the dimension is pretty small. So I can just zoom in, and I'm going to turn off this for a second and just drag this a little closer, okay, and then I can hit front view and then zoom in as needed, okay. So now I'm going to start adding some other dimensions. Now, what might happen is as I add some other dimensions, my figure might shift a little bit. So let's see what happens here. The next dimension I'm going to do, so let's go ahead and make the top edge and the bottom edge here 0.25, see if that helps us. So I'm going to go ahead and do the thickness here of 0.25. So I'm going to hit dimension, do this edge to this edge, to make that 0.25, enter. Okay, so notice it dropped my figure down pretty low here, okay? So if it does that, usually what I can do is if I turn off the dimension tool and just grab that line, that edge, it'll slide, and you can then just left click and hold and then drag it up and it reforms the shape that I want. But it's keeping the correct distance. Then what I'm going to do is do the outside diameter like I just talked about. So the outside diameter is the top edge of the profile that I drew to the axis line, but it's going to take 1.375 and divide that by 2. So I'm going to hit dimension, click on my axis line, click on the top edge, drag to my right, and do 1.375/2, enter. Okay, now I have, and now change it to 0.688. Okay. So now I need to start getting the width dimensions, okay, the correct width dimensions, because I'm definitely does not look nice and long like this, right? So let's go ahead and start with the smallest one. So the thickness from left to right is actually on the bottom half here, but it's the same, okay, just because it was cut in half. So it's 0.156. So let's go ahead and dimension that. That's from the left edge here to the right edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the left edge here, the right edge here. I drag that down and make that 0.156, enter. Okay. Then what is the overall length from the outside edge to outside edge is 4.469. So now left edge to the right outside edge and make it 4.469, enter. So if it drives it off the screen, just hit the front, and now my figure looks much better, much more in line. Now, I'm almost there. The last step I need to do, or the last two dimensions, are these little arcs here, these little corners that are round it. Now, it says a radius, capital R, 0.25 inches, TYP. What does that mean? What does TYP mean? TYP means that it's a typical dimension. So on the same view that we're looking at, on this front view here, I have a corner that's 0.25, but I also have another rounded corner. So what that means, if you have TYP, is that it's telling you that both corners are going to have the same dimension. It basically eliminates the clutter of adding an extra dimension that is the exact same on the other side to a dimension drawing. So it just makes it a little more clear to the person that's trying to build the part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Sketch Fillet. Sketch Fillet is the tool just to the left of the cut tool, the little scissors. Okay, and then I'm going to click on that one time, and I'm going to click in the corner. Now, if your dimension doesn't come up like mine did, automatically defaulting to 0.25, you can just click on the dimension and make that. But it's already defaulting, so I'm going to click both corners. I can do this all at once because it's the same. It's that TYP. And then you just hit enter. And it rounds both corners. See, now the little box popped up, and that's what I want. Okay. And then turn that off. And so now I have a round here of 0.25 and a round here of 0.25. And so now I have my profile, and it's in the correct place. And now I'm ready to do the last and easy step, which is to revolve it. So I'm going to go ahead and click the little green checkbox. I'm going to make it isometric view. Okay. And then I'm going to use the revolve tool this time. So revolve is to the right of extrude. Click on that once. I'm going to select my profile, which is the shape that I drew. When you get the red box that says revolve axis, you click in that box once, and then you click on your axis line, which is the dashed line. When you do that, you get a nice revolve, just like that, and then you're going to click the green checkbox. Now, because I don't need the front anymore, I'm going to go ahead and hide it. And then if I choose isometric view, it should square it up. Now, to make sure that I have the circle on the other side, if you just hit the little top left corner of your view cube, it'll revolve it. And so now there's that little hole that we needed on that figure. So now I have the hole here that I need with the correct diameter, and the hole on the other side that has the correct diameter. And that is our figure. So this is the rubber handle sleeve. If you have any questions, please let me know.